This is the final hour of the 7 week of this class today, and we have been talking about the element of uh, religion. Permit me to explain a little bit better that the reason why I took religion is to generalize the aspect of elements or icon of so many different religions. But after the culture, we will talk about, if possible with time, we can come back to talk about only element of Christianity. Since we are dealing with Christianity here, we'll talk about it later after we dealt with the element of culture. Major elements of cultures are, sorry, yes, many elements of cultures are there to differentiate us with whatever we have been doing. But in this perspective, we will deal with the cultural icons or elements, if you want to talk about them. Um, a culture is an accumulation of the belief, traditions, language, value of a particular group of people that comes together. So remember, there are a few things you have to put: belief, and in beliefs we have it in Christian, in religion. Tradition also is found in religion. Language could be also found in religion, and value, particularly practice of on their faith. A cultural icon can be a symbol. It's a symbol, it's a logo, it could be a picture, it could be also a word, a name, face, or a person, building, animals, or other images. These can be seen as different kind of images. Images based on cultural. Okay. Now, culture. If you understand what it means, element of culture according to certain things, they talk about religion, they talk about political philosophy, they talk about economy, they talk about language, they talk about education, they talk about social structure. These are culture icons based on all whatever you're talking about. Religion has its own culture. The icon we are talking about can be different in other ways. Okay, related to that, culture. When you look at somebody, a diagram called element of culture, there's religion, education, values, belief, material culture, attitudes, and what and what and what. So many things like that. Because we find what it is as a icon of culture. The major elements of culture are symbols, language, norms. Okay, so you can see that are the major items of culture. Symbols. We talk about symbols. Like here, I talk about what? Beliefs, okay, traditions, but it could be language, norms, which is have value here, norms, and artifacts. Language makes effective social interaction possible and influence how people conceive of concepts and objects. Major value that distinguish the United States include individualism, competitions, competition, and commitment to the work ethics. To the work ethics. Wow, that is so catching. Also, when you talk about that, well, listen. Now, other people would say that the terms they refer as elements of culture for them is religion, beliefs of a society, some tradition, art, architecture, and style. Some will say art, politics, government, and laws of a culture, maybe rules and leadership. The language has been in every aspect, which is communication, system of a culture, speech, writing, and symbol. We talk about the economy, talk about the custom, we talk about the social society and the geography of it. These are all what we talk about elements of culture in a realistic way of life. Elements of culture, learning objective. It says understanding how values and beliefs differs from norms. Explain the significance of symbols and languages to a culture. Explain the spirit wove hypothesis and discuss many things. The first and perhaps most crucial elements of cultures are we are discussing its value and practices. I'm not talking about that, but here I want you to understand values are cultural. I'd like to explain more about this on values. Okay, even though there's belief, but let me start with belief since belief is the first one. Beliefs are tenets or conviction that people hold to be true. Individuals in a society have specific beliefs, but they also share collective values. To illustrate the differences among common beliefs in the Christendom or in American dream or in also Christian dream is that anyone who works hard enough will be successful and wealthy. Underlying this belief is the American value that wealth is good and important. That is when you talk about belief. Now let's talk about value. Value, in other way, is a culture's standard for discerning what is good and just in the society. Value are deeply embodied and critical for transmitting and teaching our culture's belief. So those ones are also telling you their connection. Either one cannot be done without either one. Okay? Value helps shapes the society by suggesting what is good and bad, beauty and ugly, sought or avoided. Consider the value that the United States place upon youth. Children represent innocence and purity, while the youth adult appearance signifies sexuality. Shaped by this value, individuals spend millions of dollars each year on cosmetic products and surgeries to look young and beautiful. The United States also has an individual cultures, meaning people place a high value on individual and independence. In contrast, many other cultures are collectivist, meaning the welfare of the group and group relationship are a primary value. So it is easily recognized and generally represent an object of or idea which great culture significance to a wider culture. Okay, a cultural icon is an artifact that it's identified by members of a culture as representative of that culture. Remember, I mentioned earlier something like that. And living up to a culture's value can be difficult. It's easy to value good health, but it's hard to quit smoking. Marital monogamy is valued, but many spouses engage in infidelity. Cultural diversity and equal opportunities for people are valued in the United States, yet the country highest political office have been dominated by white men in Africa, in Asia, in other places which culture has been tampered, because when the Christianity was coming, their culture was carried along with them to do that. Now, value often suggests how people should behave, but they don't accurately reflect how people do behave. Values portray the ideal culture and standard society would like to embrace and live up to. But ideal culture differs from real culture, the way society actually is, based on with what occur and is exists. In an ideal culture, there will be no traffic accident, murders, poverty, or racial tension. But in real culture, politics offers, okay, politics offers, but in real culture, police officers, lawmakers, educators, and social workers constantly strive to prevent or repair those accidents, crime, and injustice. America people or an American teenagers are encouraged to value self celibacy. However, the number of unplanned pregnancies among teen reveals that not only is the ideal hard to live up to, but the value along alone is not enough to spare teenagers the potential consequences of having their way out when it comes to normal life of sex and whatever. So these are main thing in our culture that we're talking about. Ideally, I talk about norms somewhere, and now say norms. So far, the example in this aspect have often described how people are expected to behave in certain situations. For example, when buying food or boarding a bus, these example um, could also figure out something out of what one never thought of. So, if we continue like this, we understand that the cultures are representative of what people are in general. The process of identification too is a subject, an icon, and judged by the extent to which they can be seen as authentic proxies of the culture. So if you look at everything about culture, they've discovered that there are more of it to whatever we have talked about. So we need to understand culture in a plenty way, okay, in a way that we can be able to adjust the situation properly. A cultural symbol is a physical manifestation that signifies the ideology of a particular culture or that merely has meaning within a culture. Hmm. Okay? Every culture is made up of two aspects, namely material culture, any cultural materials that we can see and touch, and non-material culture, any culture practice um, we cannot see. Okay, culture practice that we cannot see or touch unless action taken. It's another way when you look at every uh, culture. So in every culture, these are things that we need to understand about them. Okay, those sorry major examples of former material culture include food, shelter, and clothes. Those of the yeah, those of the latter, which is non-material culture, include non and valuable, discussed, okay, non and valuable, the language, religion, music, dancing, cooking, arts, and so on. These are non material, okay, non material. Both material and non material cultures are related to a set of rules, knows how, and tools that support social life and survivor, both on the individual level and on the group level, and different definition of culture. This means that they summarize or succinctly stand for what culture are. So culture and a value and norms, non-materials, and which is what they refer to values and norms. And when you look at the norms, it talks about uh, cultural norms govern especially a social acceptable behavior. That is, they can be seen as rules or what is supposed to do. That is when you talk about norms. Norms. So that is for norms, but for value within non-material culture, the most important element in terms of attitude, how people think and behavior, what they do, are values and norms. Cultural values are socially shared attitudes towards what is important and what is not. They vary across societies and changes over time. For example, time is money, people say, but it is so only in our modern societies and was not in our olden type of society. The clock is set at school, factories, and offices included indeed, but it was not at farm. So in schools, in houses, but you don't find unless you put a watch on your hand and you can be able to see clock. Nobody put time, but we read time by our own sun and imagination and whatever. It become the indispensable instruments of industrialized and post-industrialized society. Rifkin and paraphrase: time is money today in our modern society, literally, okay, for those who are paid on the basis of number of hours they work. It was not case for farmers in small, full villages. But other than that, time is important for many. Now, value, language, traditions, all these ones have been talking about in culture. Let's look at what John A. Fries says. We have approached the term culture in the same way we have considered religion. Okay? So all are being seen in the same way. There are many proposed meaning of cultures, and these vary from the simple to the complex. Each approach has real value for understanding the society world around us. We will opt for a simple versions that will give us plenty to work with. As such, we begin with um, an understanding of culture as the combined effect of humanly constructed social elements that helps people to live together. Because this is also vital and important in our daily life. So, we will explore four elements of culture in the sense that we will be able to grab whatever we have if there is time to be able to follow it suit. The four elements of culture illustrating each element through individual and international political expression. Number one, common life practice in the society. So now I'm not sure if you get it, but the cultural the element of culture is number one is very important. Practical or practice, common life practice in society. What are we practicing? What are we doing? What are we saying? But whatever we do, it depends on our beliefs, traditions. So a culture is an accumulation of a belief, tradition that we have talked about. Okay, the logo also is here. All this is talking about the culture. It is easily recognized and generally represent an object or idea with great cultural significance to the wide cultural group. A cultural icon is an artifact that is identified by a number of culture as representative of the culture. So you can see point one that we are dealing with it, and we are talking about it as an element which it comprises to us. We say the first element of culture has to do with common or shared life. While media reporting seems to constantly prioritize stories of war, conflicts, and controversy, it is equally the case that local, national, and international society require a remarkable degree of cooperation when it comes to common life in practice in the society. Now, people live to live the same way, but the people living the same way could also be difficult when time is it is equal the same in the case of local and national and international. And we says it depends on the remarkable degree of cooperation, How do we live together? That's the big question of this last hour. How do we live together? Okay, that is a big problem. Take, for instance, we left our country and we find ourselves in Korea, but our cultural differences is clear. You cannot bring African culture and sell to Korea and expect Korean people to take the culture. You cannot take Korean culture and take it to Nigeria and say, let the Nigerians or Africans to be able to practice. But when you find yourself in between the people, the culture is important. And that's why we need to value others' culture as we continue to do things. How do we live together? Common bonds can sometimes be forgot through family ties. As the saying goes, you can choose your friend, but you are stuck with your relatives. Okay? Economic interest. What matters most is the color of your money or security. Now, this is one point under the elements of culture that we have talked about. We have 4 things or 3 things more to talk about next week. But for today, I want to thank you because you have been part of us from the beginning of this lecture to the end. So far we talked about the remaining 3 parts of the elements of religion, and finally we came into the elements of culture. But in that element of culture, we talk about one only element, which is very, very important to anyone that is listening today. How do we live together with other people? I believe you have an answer to that. Thank you. God bless you for this week. And I hope to see you next week in a good shape and in a good mood. Remember, we're supposed to go for direct contact and lecture, but the corona still is hanging there. Please, friends, colleagues, well wishers, as we live your life in Korea, be careful and be safe. Then that will give you the success at the end. See you next week as we continue from the second icon of culture. Bye-bye.